What's up everyone, Man1 Metalhead here. In this video, I'm going to install an XLive expansion card into my Behringer X32 rack. Now, I've had this X32 rack for about 6 months now, and I absolutely love it. It is a big upgrade to my Mackie VLZ 1604, and I use it mainly with my band for gigs and practices, and it is a dream. One thing I was really excited for when I got it was the ability to record all 32 tracks onto an SD card, which is what this XLive will do for you. Now, the big difference between the card that comes with the X32 and this XLive is you have 2 SD card slots, so you can record all 32 channels of the X32 individually onto these SD cards, and that is absolutely just powerful in my opinion. So you can record a live performance, all 32 channels, and then mix it down later on the X32 or on any other sequencer that you want. And I'm really excited to give this a shot. So today I'm going to install the XLive card and update the firmware on the X32 rack. Now, if you have any of the X32 family, the normal X32, the X32 compact, composer, rack, all of this should be exactly the same as far as installing and updating. So let's get into it. Now, the first thing I want to do before I install this card and update the firmware is back up all my scenes that are on the X32 rack, and it's actually really simple. So what you want to do to back up your scenes is to insert a USB drive into the USB port on the front of the unit, and then go to the scenes, and it'll bring you to the home page, and there you want to hit the utility button, and then hit the button here to export your show to the USB drive. So now you can select where you want to put it on your USB drive. I'm just going to go ahead and put it right in the top level folder and hit save. So it's going to go ahead and save it for you. So now we're going to have our entire show backed up on this USB drive. Now we shouldn't have a problem, but it's always good to be safe. So I'm going to install the XLive card. Before we do that, we want to turn off our X32. And then we'll swing around to the back. Now in the back, we're going to have the original card installed already, and we're going to take out these 2 screws on either side so we can remove the card. Once those screws are removed, we're going to go ahead and grab these 2 pull buttons, gently pull out, and there is the original card. So we're going to set that aside and pull out our new card. Now it's very important that when we remove this from the packaging that we touch something metal just to discharge any shock that might be saved up in your skin. So it should be easy enough. We're going to gently insert this in, minding the 2 tracks on either side. We're going to line it up, and this will go in very nicely, and then install those 2 screws. All right, so now that the card is installed, I'm going to go ahead and power on the unit. Once it's powered up, I'm going to go ahead and check the firmware that's installed on the X32 and on the card. To do that, we're going to go to Setup. You're going to see over here on the side the 3.07, and that is the current firmware for the X32, and we want to be up to 3.08 for the XLive card. And then we're also going to see the A09 there, and that is the firmware on the card itself, and the latest firmware is the A11. So I'm going to install the firmware for the X32 first, and that should be pretty simple. Now you're going to want to go ahead and go to the Behringer website, go to the download page, and make sure you download the latest and greatest firmware for both the X32 and the XLive. So you want to take those, unzip them, and put them into a USB drive, which I have installed here. That's very important. You do not have the 2 update files in the same root directory. So I put the firmware for the XLive card in the root directory, and then I created a folder, X32 update, and put the X32 firmware in that folder. And the main reason is when you do the update for the XLive card, you're going to boot the system and it's going to look for any firmware to update. And if there's 2 firmware in the root directory, it might get confused and might mess something up. I'm not exactly sure. They warn you not to do that. So heed their advice, put them in 2 different folders. And if you want to be very careful, go ahead and put 1 firmware on the USB stick, update that one, delete it off, put the other firmware on there, so you don't have any chance of any problems. Now, in order to do the update for the X32, we're gonna go back into the setup page, which we already are, and right under where it shows where all your firmware currently is, you can scroll down with this control and go to the update firmware. So I'm gonna select that, and it currently opens the root directory of your USB drive. So I'm gonna go to the X32, and there it is, the 3.08 update. We're going to select that, hit yes. Now it's going through the update process. So now it's up and running again. That took about a minute, maybe less. So it was really quick. So we're gonna go back to the setup page. We're gonna check we're at 3.08. Perfect. Now before I go ahead and update the XLive firmware, I'm just gonna check the updates on the X32 to see if the card is there. So from the setup menu, we're going to scroll all the way to the right where it says card. And now we can see we have our XLive card enabled. Now before I go ahead and start using this, I'm going to update the firmware on the XLive card. To do that, we're going to power down the X32. Now remember, I put the firmware update in the root directory of the USB drive. So we're gonna go ahead, hold the USB button down, and turn on the X32. Now you can see there that it's giving a bunch of prompts to the fact that it is doing the update for the firmware. All right, so the update is completed. That took a little bit longer than the X32, maybe 90 seconds to 2 minutes. So it's prompting me to go ahead and switch off, so we're gonna do that. And then I will switch back on. All right, again, we're gonna go ahead and check the firmware levels. And you can see there we have the A11, so we're good to go. Now let's go ahead and go back to the card in the setup. So now let's go ahead and install an SD card. So you can see that it recognizes the SD card and is prompting me to format it. So to format, we're gonna go to Utility and Format SD1. So it looks like I ran into a small problem. All of my SD cards that I have are 64 gigabytes, and it looks like the official maximum capacity is 32 gigabytes. So I'm gonna have to go ahead and get a new SD card and continue this in a little bit. All right, I think I got it. So I picked up two 32 gigabyte SanDisk SD cards, and these are a class 10 cards, so they should work. So let's give this a shot. Here we go. Now again, we'll go back into the setup, go all the way to the card. And there we go, we got 32 gigabyte card there. It says we have 1 hour, 26 minutes, and 29 seconds of recording time. The square next to it shows up green, the other ones that showed up red, so that's definitely a bonus. I think we're on the right track here. Now before I do any recording, I'm gonna adjust a couple settings of the XLive card. So in the card menu, I'm gonna go to the down arrow to go to the next level of controls. And I actually wanna change the number of channels that I'm recording because it is set to 32 channels. I don't need 32. So I'm gonna switch to 16 because we usually use 16 channels, and that'll free up half of my space so it's not recording dead channels when we do the recording. To do that, I'm gonna take this wheel, scroll down here to 16, hit it, and now we're ready to go for 16 channels. We're just gonna hit the up button again and go back to the main controls, and we're gonna do some recording. So I'll hit the record, and it is now recording the session. I'm gonna move a microphone right in here. So hopefully this microphone is now recording. It looks like we've got some levels here. and I think we are going to be good to go. So I think that's pretty good. So we're gonna hit the stop button. And there we go, when you have a new session. So that is it. That is installing the XLive card into an X32, as well as updating the firmware and getting a first recording going. I'm really excited to use this. We've got a show coming up in a week, and I really want to record our show, so hopefully that goes really well. Now hopefully this video helped you guys out. If it did, please give me a thumbs up down there. If you want to hear more about what I'm working on, like recording gear, guitar tips and tricks, that kind of stuff, feel free to subscribe to my channel below and hit that little bell icon so you're notified whenever I have a new video come out. But hey, until next time, rock on.